President Trump will impose a new round of tariffs on imported heavy-duty trucks, branded medications, kitchen cabinets, and upholstered furniture. Trump announced the change will take effect on October 1st, writing on Truth Social last night that the large-scale flooding of the products into the U.S. by other countries is unfair to local manufacturers.
At the end of September, President Donald Trump announced a new round of tariffs that take effect on October 1st. Heavy-duty trucks, branded medications, upholstered furniture at 30%, and kitchen and bathroom cabinets at 50% are on the list. The White House framed it as protection against unfair imports and even a matter of national security. Yet the U.S. Chamber of Commerce noted that top suppliers are America's closest allies, with Mexico the largest source of trucks. A policy introduced as strength may soon feel like added weight on American households.
Again, this dates back to the Trump administration started an investigation last month in August, part of the 232, Section 232, where they can look at certain sectors and claim that there's some sort of national security risk. So they're claiming this potentially on furniture. So they want to put a 30% tariff on upholstered.
The economic reality is simple. Roughly 80% of upholstered furniture and about half of kitchen cabinets sold in the United States are imported. Tariffs mean higher costs for retailers and builders. Companies like Restoration Hardware, Williams-Sonoma, and Wayfair depend on imports. Firms such as La-Z-Boy and Ethan Allen make more at home and will be less affected. The consequences extend beyond retail. Families already stretched by high mortgage rates will face more expensive renovations. Contractors building or remodeling kitchens and bathrooms will struggle as materials jump in price. Wall Street responded briefly, with RH shares falling by 2 to 3% before recovering, a sign that investors doubt the tariffs will rebuild U.S. capacity anytime soon. For ordinary Americans, the pressure will be immediate as essential household goods become costlier. North of the border, Ottawa has been watching closely. The Carney government already scaled back some counter tariffs earlier in the year to leave room for negotiations with Washington. Instead of escalating, Canada is funneling financial support to industries hit hardest. The federal government pledged 400 million Canadian dollars in relief loans to Algoma Steel in September, with Ontario adding another 100 million. These moves come as Canada's parliamentary budget officer warns that the 5-year deficit path has doubled compared to the previous government, creating concerns about fiscal sustainability. When it comes to furniture and cabinetry, Canada sees an opportunity. Its manufacturers can lean on shorter transport routes into the American Midwest and northeastern states, giving them an advantage when shipping costs and tariffs weigh on other suppliers. Ottawa is considering tools such as remission of tariffs on imported inputs, tax credits for new investment, and diversification through agreements with the European Union and Southeast Asia. By doing so, Canada is trying to shield its own consumers while positioning itself as a flexible partner for American buyers caught in the tariff crossfire. The result is a sharp contrast. Washington's plan may shield some domestic producers, but risks fueling inflation just as the Federal Reserve debates interest rate cuts. The latest labor report showed weekly jobless claims at 218,000 in late September, a sign of resilience. Yet higher furniture and cabinet prices could still weigh on household budgets and slow housing recovery. Meanwhile, Canada, despite facing its own fiscal strains, is adapting quickly. By cushioning its industries and seeking new markets, it reduces reliance on the U.S. while seizing a chance to fill gaps left by American tariffs. The irony is clear. A measure designed to prove strength could instead weaken confidence at home. It risks raising costs for American families while allowing Canada to reposition itself as both partner and competitor. What was meant to revive U.S. manufacturing may end up remembered as another example of tariffs backfiring.
Looking around the world now, you've got China sort of playing by its own playbook economically. You have the U.S. playing by its own playbook, ignoring various agreements, including at times USMCA. What does that mean for the rules-based system for a middle power like Canada?
At the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered a message that left many in Washington unsettled.
And nobody's perfect in this. We have a free trade agreement with the European Union. And we're re-engaging with China and other major economies in terms of developing the rules bilaterally with them.
He announced that Canada would re-engage with China, seeking to establish a new framework for bilateral rules. This declaration landed just as the United States, under President Trump, has extended its reciprocal tariff regime to every major trading partner, including Canada. The tariffs were meant to force others into accepting America's terms. Yet Carney signaled that Canada was ready to chart its own path. Instead of bowing to pressure, Ottawa is turning outward, searching for new alliances and new leverage. The story begins with a clash of visions. Trump builds walls of tariffs. Carney opens doors to alternative partners. That contrast sets the stage for what comes next.
Carney made clear that both Washington and Beijing are playing by their own rulebooks. For Canada, that reality means waiting for others to return to multilateral discipline is no longer an option. Ottawa will now attempt to develop direct rules with China, recognizing the risks but also the opportunities of engaging the world's second-largest economy. Sensitive areas such as national security and data privacy will remain closed. Yet Canada intends to carve out a controlled space for trade and cooperation. This is not surrender, but calculation. With Trump escalating confrontation and tariffs disrupting steel, autos, and farm products, Carney has decided that Canada must place a chip on every table. The re-engagement with China is meant to give Ottawa more balance and more say, even if it means moving in a direction opposite to Washington. This step is designed to give Canada breathing room at a time when U.S. trade actions are tightening around all partners. Carney also reminded his audience that Canada already holds positions in two of the world's largest rules-based systems, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, known as CPTPP, and the Canada-EU Free Trade Agreement. These agreements include standards for labor and sustainability, the kind of provisions that are recognizable and enforceable. By being part of both, Ottawa can serve as a bridge between Europe and Asia. The United States, by contrast, has stepped away. Trump pulled America out of the original TPP and has repeatedly ignored commitments under USMCA. Carney's point was not hidden. Canada is investing in systems where rules matter, while Washington sidelines itself. As those networks expand, America risks becoming the bystander. Ottawa is signaling that its future will not be locked inside Trump's tariff cage. Instead, Canada is building the kind of international bridges that leave Washington outside the room when new rules are written. Carney did not deny Canada's vulnerability. Nearly 80% of Canadian trade still flows south into the United States. But he emphasized the importance of what he called the growth at the margin. New trade with Europe, with CPTPP countries, and with China can shift the balance over time. Even small increases in those directions can change the outlook for industries battered by tariffs. Trump's reciprocal tariffs, meant to squeeze, are creating the incentive for Canada to move elsewhere. The backfire is clear. Instead of reinforcing dependence, the policy has accelerated diversification. Canada is showing that it can step out of America's shadow and place itself in the center of a different global map. The contrast could not be sharper. Trump designed his tariff regime to keep Canada in line, but Carney's new approach flips that logic. By re-engaging with China and doubling down on Europe and Asia, Ottawa is no longer asking Washington for permission. Canada is signaling that it has options and that the United States is not the only game in town. This is the image that left Trump stunned, watching as his neighbor quietly walked out of the cage he built. That is why Carney's words in New York carried such weight. Trump sought to lock Canada in. Ottawa has walked out, leaving the U.S. president stunned as his northern neighbor rewrites the script of survival and influence.
71% of Canadian consumers say they intend to buy fewer American products this year.
Canada is a very tough country to deal with.
It's got some staying power. When Trump calls us the 51st state as a deliberate insult, it is amplified on social media. And so he's actually keeping it top of mind. He's keeping the boycott going.
It began with a remark that shook Canadians. In February, President Trump triggered a trade war and suggested Canada might be America's 51st state. What could have been dismissed as political theater struck a nerve. By spring, surveys showed 71% of Canadians plan to reduce purchases of American goods in 2025. Economists cited by CNBC warned the boycott could slice 0.3% from U.S. GDP this year, about $90 billion in lost output. Walking into grocery stores in Ontario or Quebec, the shift is plain to see. Where displays once overflowed with U.S. corn and berries, shelves now carry Canadian flags and Made in Canada labels. What began as consumer frustration has turned into a movement of economic nationalism. The message is simple. If there is a Canadian choice, that is the choice people will make.
The pressure is most obvious in food and drink. At Vince's Market, a Toronto-based chain serving 30,000 weekly customers, managers said that during Canada's off-season, they once relied on American produce for up to 70% of their stock. Today, that share has dropped to about 30%. Apps like MapleScan help shoppers verify origin and encourage them to favor local substitutes. Losses are clear in agriculture and beverages. Canada was the United States' second-largest food export market in 2024, worth $28.4 billion. California wines once filled 30 to 40% of red wine sales in Canadian shops. That revenue, about $60,000 a week for some stores, has evaporated. Provinces imposed a 25% tariff on U.S. alcohol this March, and bottles vanished from shelves. Imports of distilled spirits from the U.S., valued at $221 million in 2024, are being replaced by supplies from France, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. American farmers and vintners who depended on cross-border sales are watching demand collapse.
The boycott is not confined to products. Travel has become another front. In 2024, 20 million Canadians visited the United States and spent $20.5 billion. This year, the flow is shrinking rapidly. Online searches for U.S. trips from Canada dropped 50% in the spring. Land crossings in March were down almost 30% year-over-year, while air travel fell 22% in June, according to CBC. For border economies, this is a crisis. Restaurants, retail outlets, and hotels in Windsor and Detroit, or Buffalo and New York State, report vanishing traffic. The U.S. Travel Association estimated America is on track to lose $12.5 billion in international visitor spending in 2025 compared with last year. Local businesses describe empty parking lots and declining revenues with no clear path to recovery.
The White House insists tariffs are making America stronger, yet for U.S. companies watching their Canadian sales disappear, the picture looks very different. While Japan and the European Union have signed new tariff frameworks and South Korea remains in talks, Canada is drifting further away. Instead of cooling tensions, Trump's rhetoric often reignites them. By repeating provocative statements and doubling down on trade barriers, he has helped keep the boycott alive. The result is a cycle of loss. American producers are squeezed, border towns are weakened, and international travelers are looking elsewhere. Even in Europe, early signs show consumers turning away from U.S. brands, suggesting the damage is not limited to North America. For Canadians, the Buy Canadian movement has become a unifying act of resistance. For Americans, it is a warning that tariffs and insults can cost dearly in jobs, sales, and reputation. Trump promised to put America first. The irony is that his approach has left America losing ground in its closest and most reliable market. The boycott that started in Canada is proving durable, and the costs are mounting day by day.